folks. All right, we're going to start talking about some of the content way at the bottom of Unit 1 here related to FTP. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol, as we were talking about in our little lecture before. And it's the technology that we use to transfer files from our computer up to the web server so that the world can see them. There's an instruction set here that you can read. These were developed by Wendy Revolinsky. Handy guide, so if you guys are online students, there's all the information in written form if you prefer to do it that way rather than watch a video like what you're doing right now, if you're listening to my voice. But what I'm going to do in the video is essentially those steps. We're going to talk about a lot of little issues as we kind of go along the way. And then there's also this article here about why do we need FTP in the first place. And I think I sort of explained that, but because that's the tool we use to upload stuff to a web server when you're not sitting in front of the web server. So, I mean, if you had like a physical presence with the web server where you had a keyboard, mouse, and monitor connected to it, and you could plug in your flash drive and upload your file, that's the way you can do it too, but nobody does it that way, right? The only people that sit and touch the servers are usually, infrastructure people or networking people that can walk into the server closet and actually touch the server. Real remote work never happens like that. So the grand goal here is really to complete this assignment, the simple FTP upload. We are not, and I just want to emphasize this, we're not creating a web page here. We're just going to create a text file, upload it to the server, and see if we can hit it. And if we can pull it back on our screen, fantastic. I've had a couple people already working on their own from both sections of the class that were successful in doing it without really too much coaching. But then I realized, and Jeffrey, you're one of those, where some of the wording I had in my assignment was a little misleading. So I just corrected the wording in the assignment.
Yeah. Hit him.
All right, so let's take a look at how we're going to proceed here, because the grand goal of the assignment is just simply to create a file, upload it, access it, and give me the link. Right? And then that's kind of our repeating process for all homework. So important in that regard too. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is let's understand that we need a separate piece of software to do this. Now, actually, technically that's not true. And so I'm going to just kind of give you guys a really quick example here again. In the old days, back in my day, so we look on this, like hammering that theme, when I first learned how to FTP, web browsers really kind of weren't a thing yet, right? We would do it all from the command line, and all major operating systems, Windows, Mac OS, and all the flavors of Linux will be able to do FTP from a command prompt, provided you know what you're doing. Okay, here's the thing. It's complicated, right? Because there's a whole separate command line language you have to learn. So if you want to upload a file, you have to put it. If you want to download a file, you have to get it, and you have to know the exact server URL and host name, and you have to be in the right folders on Windows inside the command. It's complicated, right? So we just really don't do it that way anymore. But I will tell you, in a pinch, in an emergency, if you have no software available to you and you're on a locked system, that's still a way that works. And it's on every operating system. No software install is necessary, by the way. Just be connected to the internet, right? Not the way we're going to do it. If you're really gung-ho on learning it, there's great tutorials on YouTube, I'm sure, right? Some geek has created it and it's written in a textbook. The more modern and practical way is to use what we call FTP client software, right? There's some that are better than others. And I'm not trying to push a particular product, but we've been using a product here for a while called FileZilla. And one of the reasons we're fans of that product is very simply because it's cross-platform. It works on every platform. I think there's even versions for mobile. I could be wrong. And it has both a client and a server portion. We're only going to use the client piece. And it works well with our system. And I think it's pretty intuitive to use once you get used to it. There are some little glitches with the install. So what I'm hoping here is that either somebody here in the classroom, when we get to the actual install part, so don't like race ahead and do the install. If we could watch you install and I'll coach you through it and we'll record that into the session, because the problem is I already have it installed and I don't want to uninstall and reinstall. So we'll watch somebody do it from scratch and I will coach. But I'm going to show you first where to get the software. So bring up a tab in your browser and just start typing File Z, and by then it should be, you know, so File Z with no space, and you're looking for FileZilla. It's spelled just like this, FileZilla. There is no cost to this software. It is open source software, completely free to use. However, you got to, like I said, you got to watch the install because they try to like package up other things, and you know, got to pay the bills, right? So they try to sell other services in the midst of it. So once you find that website, it's filezilla-project.org. Go to the website and you'll see this screen. And what you'll want to click on is client, not server, right? Client. So click that screen and then you'll go to this other screen here, and it should auto detect your system. So if I was on my Mac, it should bring up the Mac version. If I was on like Ubuntu or Linux Mint or something like that, it should bring up the Linux version. So for Windows people, it's pretty easy. You just click the big green button, right? However, and if you've already done that, because a lot of people do that. So if you click that, it's going to download the installer and then give you all these screens and make you make all these choices. We want the free version. We don't want any of the paid versions or the manuals or the pro or any of that stuff. If you were truly a pro and use this a lot, like daily, and you worked for a company that's willing to pay for it, pay for it. But otherwise, I really don't see a reason to pay for it. So don't be duped into paying. They're just trying to pay the bills, right? It's free software. They get people to use it for free. They like it, and then they try to get them to pay, right? No harm done. Everybody's got to eat, right? The free version is enough for us. So choose this column here and download the free version, and it'll download to your machine just like that. Okay. Now, if you're on Mac or any Linux distribution, or maybe you're working inside a virtual machine, pretty rare, you want to go to this other download links here at the bottom, and you can then select the exact flavor that you want. You will notice they have both what we call EXEs. So see, like right here, like the EXE at the end of the file name, which means it's got an installer. It's a piece of software that installs it for you, which is recommended for most people. And there's also zip versions, which means it's packaged portable software that all you have to do is unzip it and run it. This is kind of an interesting thought. So that's something you could put, for example, like on a flash drive or in your Google Drive or on your phone, and then transfer it to a machine and just use it without installing it. It's kind of an interesting thing. That whole category of software, by the way, is called portable software, and kind of an interesting little issue. It sometimes does create some security issues, but it also, like if you can imagine, if I put FileZilla on a USB drive and I walked into a classroom computer where I can't install anything and I can still run my software and do my work, it's kind of interesting, right? So that's why they offer it. Right, so find the right version for your operating system. Now I'm going to ask from either here in class or online, is anybody willing to share their screen and walk through the process? Who's got it downloaded and needs help? No, you guys are all good?
I downloaded it last night.
Did you?
But I didn't get as far as trying to assign it.
Oh, you did? Okay, so you did, but you installed it though?
I installed
Okay.
it.
Okay, so Vidal, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and so you'll get like the Zoom window back up. If you could hit the share screen and share your entire screen, not just the app, if possible. All right, folks. So now we are looking at Vidal's screen, and what I have to do here is I'm going to move it over to this screen because this is the one that's recording. All right, so get the little Zoom windows out of there. All right, so Vidal has downloaded and he's running the installer. So go ahead and hit run. You're on Windows 10, sir? Okay. So he's running the installer. I'll show you, it's pretty easy to do. There's just a couple little spots where they try to, I'll say, get you, you know. All right, so now it's asking if you want to make changes to your device. You're going to say yes. All right, we'll wait for it to launch. Here's the installer. Of course, you have to agree to the license agreement. Now here, don't click hastily here, okay? Because here's the first one where they're trying to get you to install some antivirus. Decline. So see the little decline button? Make sure you hit decline. Unless you really want it, but I'm going to suggest against. I will tell you, okay, so you already have FileZilla on the machine, but that's okay. Go ahead and choose next. So you're using a school issued machine, Vidal, is that correct? Okay, so it's just going to be upgrading. The install process is the same. Here's my fair warning to all the people out online and here in the classroom. Some antivirus checkers will block the install of this product because of the extra payload. So they're trying to get you to like install AVG, for example. Some antivirus programs will see that as a virus and block the install. If that happens to you, please let me know. There's ways that you can like temporarily turn off your virus scanner to allow it to install. I assure you that it's nothing malicious there. They're just trying to install a security tool and pay their bills. All right, Vidal, thank you very much. Why don't you go ahead and click the finish button. And I don't know if you hit the button to allow it to run, but that's, folks, that's what it looks like when it runs the install. It's a pretty easy process. Okay, and the program is now open. They always throw this splash screen up. It's also very common for this program, by the way, if there's a new version, they'll put up a screen that says, do you want to install the new version? I'll be real frank with you guys. When it's working fine for me, I have really not a lot of incentive to upgrade. You know, that's just me personally.
So just click OK or back to
Yep, just go ahead and click OK here. All right, and what you're going to see, if you can just leave the screen exactly how it is this interface that they're going to present to you. You're going to get very comfortable with this, but I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of a, I guess, a guided tour. And you can see I got my annotation toolbar here. So I'm going to actually draw on your screen here a little bit. So some areas that we're going to use a lot are these three boxes up top. So the host, the username, and the password. I think they're pretty self-explanatory, right? In the host box, you'll put the name of our web server, which I'll give you in just a second. Username, your username, password, your password. Now you need to know where those things are located. But long story short, you put that information in, and then you hit this quick connect button, and you're connected to the server. The very first time you connect, you will get an error message that pops up, and this is completely normal. So I'm going to guide you through this, Vidal, that warns that you're connecting to an insecure FTP server. Are you sure you want to do this? And it makes it sound like you shouldn't. And I assure you it's safe. It's an intentional configuration that way. So Vidal, can I coach you through doing that? So in the host box, you're going to type Prometheus. Now that one's not necessarily easy to spell, but you guys will get good at it. So that's PROMETHEUS.gtc.edu. That looks correct. So PROMETHEUS.gtc.edu. In the username box, you're going to put in your username. Now, for most of you, that is going to be first initial, last name. And then your password, for most of you, is going to be your student ID number. Now, if you're not sure, there's a spot in your grade book where you can find this. So you go back to Blackboard, click on My Grades in the left sidebar, and not that far down, maybe like 4 or 5 entries down, you'll see Prometheus username / password. The slash is not part of the username or the password, but it should be for almost everybody, first initial, last name, and then your student ID number as the password, right? And I see you copy pasting them in there, and that's absolutely fine, Vidal. That's a clever way to do it, right? And then you can just get your password in there. There are ways to save the passwords into the product, but that's up to you to do so. For the port number, okay, so I see you paused there, right? Because you're a networking guy, so you kind of get like the port number. FTP defaults to port 21 for command structure, port 20, it's either 22 or 23 for actual transfer of files. But but you don't have to type that in because we use the default port, so it'll auto negotiate to port 21. You can leave it blank. This is kind of an interesting little side note. One way to increase the security of an FTP server is not to use the default ports, because then people know what to attack. So from a cyber standpoint, it's kind of an interesting thought. A lot of private FTP servers, and I don't want to let you guys know why I know about this, but in the old days when people used to, like, let's say, share stuff not so legally on the internet, one way to do it was people would have private FTP servers on custom port addresses and run all these, do all this crazy stuff. But the default is 21, so you can type it in if you want, but you can leave it blank. Then just go ahead and hit that quick connect button. All right. All right, so here's the error message we're talking about, and I want you guys to take a really quick look at this. And Vidal, if you could do me a favor, don't move from there. I'm gonna do a snip of it. Because I get, I always get this question every semester, so I have a snip of it just for my own sake. All right, so what we want to do in this situation when you get this box is a little checkbox that says always allow insecure plain FTP for the server. Check that and then say okay. Otherwise, what's going to happen is every time you connect, it's going to put up that box. Don't freak out and say cancel, because then you won't be able to FTP. All right, so go ahead and say okay. And now you are connected. And Vidal, if you don't mind, maximize this window, take it up to the full size. Oh, no. Just hit the maximize. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So now once you're connected, let's take a look at kind of like the anatomy of the screen. And it really kind of breaks down into like basically 4 areas that are critical. The one is this side of the screen. So the left side of the screen is a listing of the folders and files on your machine that you're touching in front of you. So that's your local machine. Left side is local. The right side of the machine, so these 2 windows, are the folder and file structure of your account on the web server. On Prometheus. And what you're looking at, and this is the question that was really, confusing some of my students online, is because I still, in the assignment listing said, put the stuff in the root of your public HTML folder. Well, what we did is we eventually decided that we're just going to drop people directly into that folder because we would have so much difficulty explaining the concept of it to them. But basically anything that you put on the right side of the screen will be visible on the internet as long as you have the right URL, right? And it's content that can be visible on the internet. So left side local, right side remote. That's a really bad R, but I think you get the point. Yes, E? Do you say to click always allow? Yes, please click always allow. Now, to explain why. So on a lot of professional hosting platforms, they really prefer that you transmit everything securely, right? Now, from a private standpoint, especially if you're working on the same network where the server is housed, like we are here on campus, it's kind of functionally not necessary. It also creates a connection barrier for people, Plus, let's face it, we're not working with credit card numbers or financial information. These are like student web pages. Like if people want to, I guess, pack your stuff, have fun. It's not like you're going to get any money out of us or something, Right. So yes, Vidal.
The right side and left side. The right side is Prometheus, so you're saying that's going to go in the public domain.
Yes. Yeah. So right. So because this stuff here, so the stuff in this area is on the Prometheus web server, anything you put there, right, technically is visible and accessible from the public internet, right, without a password. Now, the other areas of the screen kind of interesting is you have this part up here. This is kind of like a little console area where every time you do a click on the screen, what's really happening in the background is the program is translating it into a command line command. And that's what you see as messages coming back to and from the server. The very bottom of the window down here is where you can see if your files, which files are about to transfer, have they transferred, did they succeed, did they fail, how fast are they uploading. Usually when we're on campus, by the way, for most of the stuff that we're gonna do, it'll be like a blink of an eye and it's uploaded, unless it's like a 10 meg video or something. E first, I see you got your hands up.
So I have an error on this that I've been acting to the server, and someone else in the chat also get an error.
Okay, let's take them one at a time. So E, why don't we do this? Vidal, I'm gonna ask that you stop sharing your screen. And I see a couple of people with questions. So E, why don't we start with you since you had your hand up. Could you share your screen? Let's take a look at what you're looking at. And folks, for doing this part of it, normally, like if I was like doing student interaction, I would normally pause the video. This is kind of an exception because I think it's really helpful for people to see people having problems and then how you overcome them, because everybody's going to run into different issues. Don't forget there's that one issue, basically where, your antivirus might not allow you to install it, right? So we can work around that. So now we're looking at E's screen, and she is working on a Mac. All right, I think E, all right, I think, and I'm gonna speculate that I think you have the wrong username in the system. So can you go to the grade book really quick and just verify, because I don't think you have a really long hyphenated last name. I think I only used the first part.
On the grade book, it says all of it.
It does, okay. Can you bear with me here? Because what I'm gonna do is I have a separate spot here where I can look it up and I can verify it. Oh, you're right. Yeah, it is all of it. And you tried, you put your student ID in there? Okay, let's now take a look, if we could, at how you spelled Prometheus. I'm having the issue where it's like behind my toolbar up on the screen. I don't know if you guys can see that, so I'm not entirely telling if it's spelled correctly. So it's prometheus.gtc.edu, right? And you have nothing before it and nothing after it, okay? And then, so you have E. Cesario Olivares, right?
Yeah.
And then I have a 7-digit student ID number. Could you just retype the ID number? I'm assuming you can spell your name correctly, right? Okay, here's the secondary question. You're working on your Mac right now?
Yeah.
Are you on the guest network? On the guest Wi-Fi? You're on the regular Wi-Fi?
No, the wireless one.
All right. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to probably need to reset your password, just to make sure. So just bear with me here. I'm going to do that on my other screen. I am going to pause the recording just for a second. And if you guys are also having problems, anybody else having problems, we're going to get to everybody's. So that's the standard part of the session. So I'm going to pause the recording here just for a second while I reset E's password. All right, we figured out everybody's connectivity issues, some pretty notable things. If you're working at home, you should not have a problem connecting through your regular connections at home. When you're on campus, you should make a special note if you're connected to the guest Wi-Fi network here at Gateway, you will not be able to connect to our servers. If you are on GTC wireless Wi-Fi, you should be able to connect to the servers. If for any reason your username and password are not working, just contact me and we'll figure those pieces out. Not unusual the first time you're trying this to have a couple little hiccups. It's not really a big deal. So don't go into panic mode ever. Now, what you guys have been doing, and you should be seeing FileZilla on my screen right now, is basically this. So I'm going to bring up Prometheus. I'm going to make sure I spelled it right. .gtc.edu. I'm going to put in my username and my password, which sometimes I forget on Prometheus. And I am connected. So now you'll notice as I connected, the console at the top was spitting out a bunch of commands. So it shows you all the stuff that happened basically as you're connecting. On my screen on the left side, of course, these are all my local files and folders. And then here is my account on the server as it is. Now you'll notice that I have a couple of files in here and you guys don't. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those files just so my screen looks like your screen, right? And I'm starting with a blank account just like you guys. In the past, I usually have not used Prometheus personally. I would always use our old server, Apollo. Apollo is still up and running and we still use it actively, but it's kind of a mix of students. So if you were a CSS student, you might be using it for Python programming or scripting. Older web students, we do database work on that server and run CMSs on that server. And we have some students that were here so long that they're on both servers and whatever. We usually leave the accounts there, but Apollo is our legacy server. It has several thousand student accounts on it, if you can fathom that. We also use it to teach all our high school classes, but Prometheus is our main server now. And once you're successfully connected, this is what the screen looks like, empty folder. All right. Our task right now is now to create a text file, put it into that folder, and then look at it in the web browser. I am going to take a 5-minute break though. We're going to and come back and do that. So the first step that we're going to do is we're actually going to download a piece of software to create text files. All right. So 5-minute breaks and we'll be right back. All right. So it is 1:53. We'll be back at 1:58, folks. Okay. So now we've done this fundamental thing now that we're back from break where we got FileZilla up and working, everybody connected to their accounts. We figured out all the issues with that, so all the passwords are right. We figured out the connectivity. And that's a really important thing, having the web server to connect to. But now we need to create stuff on our own computer and start moving it up to the cloud or the server or whatever you want to think of it as. And we need some more tools. Okay, so now interestingly, and I think I've mentioned this already, that most web coding, in fact, all coding of computer programming is all done with text. There's no, real workaround for that. We take the words that we type and then the computer processes them and then does something with it. And web is no exception. So we need to have tools to do that with. Now, operating systems by their very nature, by default, come with text editors. Windows is no exception. So for example, in Windows, if I want to bring up the default text editor, it's called Notepad. Now you'll notice I have a different one called Notepad++, one of the ones I'm going to guide you to. But Notepad is the default one that's built in. And I'm just going to bring it up on screen for a second. I'm going to show it to you and then we're going to forget about it. In the old days of teaching this class, I would actually have people do work in here. And now I've rethought that strategy. This is a text editor that's here that you can type in words. I want you to notice you can't make things bold or italic or make the fonts different colors or control your margins. It's just raw text, right? And in a pinch, you can use this to create code. However, horrible tool, low-level tool, not really meant for professional usage. It's kind of like if you get a flat tire, you have a fix-a-flat can of stuff, it's a Band-Aid fix, it's not really the tool you want to use. So a couple tools that I'm going to recommend to you. And as we kind of go through the class, I'm just going to point this out. I'm going to recommend a bunch of different tools to you. And there's no right answer as to which one you use. You're going to use the one that you're most comfortable with. Most of the time, I'm going to use a product called Notepad++ because I just like it. And I've been using it for a long time. And, you know, it's hard to give up old habits sometimes. All right, so let's go to that one. All right, so go to your browser and just type Notepad++. Macintosh people, this isn't going to work, by the way. So if you're on a Mac, I don't know if it works on Linux. You know, I don't really remember, but on PC it definitely works. And so Notepad, you type the whole word, right? No spaces in between, and ++ at the end, and you should find the notepad++.org website, and you can go right to their downloads page and grab the topmost version and install it. The install is very simple and straight ahead. You can pretty much go with all the defaults on it. I don't think I really need to coach you on it. If you guys are comfortable with installing software, it is kind of painless, really, as far as the software install goes. But download it, open the download, follow these on-screen instructions. Okay. So that's one product that you could choose. Okay, so I'll explain why I like this product. This product is a text editor like Notepad, but it offers things that are really useful for programmers. For example, and I'll pull Notepad++ up on the screen here, because I do have it open and running. So here it is open and running. For one thing, it has these handy features like line numbers, right? Notepad doesn't do that. You'll also notice that I have multiple tabs open. Notepad doesn't do that. I can also get color coding for just about every programming language that exists inside this piece of software. It also, because it's open source and has been developed mostly by kind of like the Linux open source world, so I'm going to guess this probably has a Linux version. It also has a bunch of different extensions and plugins that you can add, including an FTP tool, which I really don't like, but you can. You can add compilers and debuggers and yada, 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 yada. You can do all this stuff with it, right? I just use it for its raw text capabilities. It is my de facto tool for working with text files of any sort. The other thing that's kind of neat about it is you can open non-text files and take a look inside of them and see what they look like, including like video files, graphics files, executables, and other weird things. It's really kind of a bizarre tool that it even lets you do that, but you can do that, right? So that's kind of an interesting tool. Now, the other tool that's really popular, and if I were on a Mac, by the way, this is the one that I would choose for the default text editor, and it's this product called Visual Studio Code. Now, I want you to be careful when you type this in, because there's a Visual Studio, which is the full-blown product from Microsoft that costs money. Would also work, but much more complicated. And then there's Visual Studio Code, which is a free coding editor. Once again, like Notepad++, is a great de facto text editor and allows you to code in many different languages, including HTML and CSS, right? That one I also have already installed on my machine, and I will launch it. That's also a very simple install, right? So here it is launching on my screen right now. And it looks like I have a little bit of, I don't know, that's like pseudocode. It's not really actually code. So one or the other is usually pretty good. Visual Studio Code is particularly appealing because it is multi-platform. So you can run it on Windows, Mac, and Linux. In professional coding circles, for whatever reason, this has become probably the most popular coding product out there right now, largely because it's free. It supports just about any programming language, and it's got a really vibrant community of people using it that share tips and tricks and solutions and extensions and plugins and all this stuff you can do with it, right? And you can code just about any language with it. I'm not as big on it because I come from the Notepad++ world, and when you look at Notepad++, I mean, it looks a little bit more old fashioned, frankly, but whatever. You can skin this and make it look like a bunch of different things, by the way. You can actually do that with Visual Studio Code as well. So I would recommend that one of these two products is probably your best choice. Okay. Are there other products you can use? Absolutely, but these two are particularly useful in just doing plain text files. Right. So let's just start with these two, and then as we kind of move through the weeks, I'll make tips and recommendations about other products, and then show you what I like best, and I'll tell you what other people like best. And once again, I'm going to say there's no right answer as to which product you use. The one that you jive with basically is the right product, right? Maybe you like I think a lot of people like Visual Studio Code just because it has a dark theme to it. I can make Notepad++ look very much the same though. So take it for what it's worth. All right, that aside, our next major operation goes back to file management. If you guys remember, we did that like exercise about like making folders and where you're going to put your homework and stuff like that. And this is an extension. Before I can start coding, I once again have to go back to file management. And this is why like I spend a lot of time with it at the beginning of the class, is because how you manage your files all of a sudden becomes critical when you start working with a web server. You can't just kind of free form it. You have to know where your stuff is. You have to know how it's named. Upper and lowercase matters. The details are important. Normally on regular consumer operating systems like Windows and the Mac OS, it's dumbed down for the general public folks. But you guys have made the bold step to become professionals. We are no longer the general public. We're the guys who pretend to know it all, or actually do. Right? So we want to use real tools and work in a real way. Now, at some point, you are going to decide where you're going to store your files, right? There's might be a difference between where you store your web pages and where you store your homework. And the reason I make this distinction is one recommendation I give to my students is it's not a bad idea to take whatever you put on Prometheus and create a complete replica of it on your own hard drive that are clones of each other. Because God forbid something goes wrong and you delete something by accident on Prometheus, you got the clone still sitting on your hard drive. You can move the whole thing over and you're back up. It's a good strategy. That's not normally how I operate these days, but I'm going to do that as a demonstration point. And for some of you, you've probably already created your Web 1 folder, or you should have, right? And then maybe a Unit 1 or a Unit 2 or something like that, right? So let's go into those folders. What I'm going to do is first show you how I actually manage stuff. So you notice right here, I have like a folder on my G drive called Prometheus Utility Accounts, right? And I have more than one. And yeah, so I do this like crazy thing when I teach. I have like one that's attached to my name, like first initial, last name, like you guys have. And then when I teach, for whatever reason, I created an account one day. It was all letter A. Why? Because it's easy to remember. And it also pops up to the top of a file list. And so I've kind of stuck with that over the years. And I stole that from a student who had never named things correctly. And just to make fun of him, I'm like, all right, well, I'll name my folder A, like you do. And who knows what's in it, right? Really, the smarter approach is to name the folder relative to what's in it. For me, the A is my A account on Prometheus. So I have many accounts on Prometheus for teaching. And so whatever's in this folder, my intent would be that I have a clone of that on Prometheus exactly. Now, if you guys saw what I did before, I had some files that were on Prometheus and I deleted them. So I'm doing the same thing here. So whatever's in this AAA folder is what's on Prometheus exactly. It's going to be exact mirror clone. So wherever you put your stuff, keep that in mind, okay? Now inside this folder, we're going to go back to remember we were doing kind of like the ribbon bar thing. And so here we go with Windows 11. How do I get my ribbon bar in here? Thanks Microsoft, right? I want to activate the ribbon bar, and let's see if I can. Do that. Does anybody know how to do that in Windows 11? Now I feel like a fool for switching to Windows 11. Or they just change it. Fascinating. All right. So what should I do? Panic? Yeah, sure. I should panic, run away crying or whatever. Okay, so once again, the grand IT rule, we don't know how. I'm going to say Windows 11 File Explorer ribbon bar. Maybe I should even say missing, right? Somebody's going to have a post. How to restore the ribbon bar. All right. How do I get the ribbon back? Okay, so do we watch the video? Or just read? Control F1. Right click anywhere on the ribbon bar. All right, let's just try a couple of these. All right, so I'm gonna right click. Okay, I'm not sure how that helps. All right, Control F1. Not working for me. You guys? Yeah, so I feel at a loss here. Because normally what I do is when I do this, so you might want to watch my older videos. I'm just warning you guys. In Windows 10, you have your ribbon bar, and there's some settings in there that we're going to have to click. So I'm going to be fumbling through this. And let's see if, aha, okay. No. All right, so we'll figure it out as we go. I might do it with right clicks. All right, so the one thing that we have to do is whenever we're working in the file window, and I think I mentioned this to you last time, is we want to make sure that we can see every aspect of a file. We're going to run into an issue really quickly that we're going to have a hard time overcoming if we don't. So normally when I create a file in a folder, and I'm going to show you this by just doing it, I'm going to right click inside the empty part of the folder. I'm going to choose new, and then I'm going to choose text document. So I can get to this same interface, by the way, by coming up here and clicking new, and notice it gives you the same stuff, right? But I'm just going to create a text document. Go ahead and create it. And normally what you're going to see in Windows is this. You're going to see the fact that basically the file gets named, it highlights in blue, or whatever your highlight color is, and it's waiting for you to name it something, something. All right. And then you press enter or click off of it and it locks into place. And now I have an empty text file. There's nothing in it called something.txt. Right. Now, for most consumer operating systems, what happens, and see, this is where I'm a little perplexed by this, because with the ribbon bar, normally, and see, I don't like this at all. So I'm going to be complaining. We have a menu that allows us to turn a couple of things on and off, and this is going to be kind of convoluted, so I might have to actually switch to a different machine to show it to you, or maybe get one of you to share your screen. Not an issue for the Mac people in the room, by the way, but what I'm trying to trigger here is the ability to look at file extensions or not. And so I have to kind of go back to the old-fashioned way of doing this. I'm really curious as to why they made this switch. Not something, I thought, these were turned on, and maybe there's a way in here to display the ribbon bar, right? So if you guys didn't catch how I did this in Windows, so this is Windows 11. We're looking for the options menu. So you probably have that as a top menu item if you're on Windows 10. And you guys can chime up and say, yes, I have it. No, I don't. And then it brings up this tab, and then on the View tab, there'll be a bunch of little check boxes and stuff that are really important for us as IT pros, that we want different than what regular consumers have. The most important one is right here. So you notice I had to, it was at the bottom of my window, but you might have to scroll down to it. And it's this one here that says, hide extensions for known file types. So the default in Windows is this. And I'm going to turn it on for a second and hit apply. Okay. Now notice what happened to my text file in the file manager it got rid of the file, it got rid of that .txt at the end of it. That's not actually gone, but for regular consumers, that's good enough. They make a Word file, they make a video, they got a picture. They don't care about the file extension. The file extension is hidden. And when you double click that file, what the file extension does is if it's TXT, it opens up whatever program is associated with TXT on your file or your operating system and launches the program. If it was, for example, a JPEG, it would open up your image viewer. If it was a MP4 or MP3, it might open up your audio or video player, for example. If it's a doc, a document, it would open up Microsoft Word, right? Most consumers don't care about that, right? Because they're not really doing the kind of stuff we're doing, but we have to hotwire things. You have to make sure that you go to that options menu and uncheck hide extensions for known file types. What does happen on Windows 10 is you should actually have a view menu at the top, right? And maybe you guys can confirm this for me. And then on the ribbon bar will be a little thing that says hide file extensions, and you just check it or uncheck it. And here's the general rule of thumb, IT pros, uncheck that thing, right? You always want to see your file extensions because you're a person in the know. You don't want to be guessing at it. And more importantly, because we actually need to change it, right? So I'm going to hit apply and say, okay. On the Macintosh, right? So we got a couple Mac people in the room. There's a spot within Finder where you can go to the preferences and you can show file extensions. Now, you might not like that on the Mac. So this is a fair warning on the Mac. You might not like that on the Mac because then when you go to like your apps folder, all your apps will have like, you know, Google Chrome.app. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So you might not like that as much there, but it's still pertinent on the Macintosh as well. All right, so just something to keep in mind. Same is true on Linux file systems, but the Linux file systems by default will show the file extension. So why is this important? Well, we created a text file. So what I'm going to basically tell you is that an HTML file, which we're going to just create in just a moment now, is a text file. The only difference is we changed the file extension, which now in principle turns it into a web page. So let's do that. So with your file extensions visible, right click, and then, okay, so this is Windows 11 again. Windows 10, there'll be an option way at the bottom that says rename. On Windows 11, apparently that's not a normal part of it, so we're going to do show more options, and there's the rename. See it way down there at the bottom? Now, don't just rename your file, right? Because you notice only part of it is highlighted. We want to select all of it, so you can do that two ways. You can get your mouse in there and drag and select the whole thing, or hold down the shift key and arrow over, or you can control A, highlights the whole thing. Option A on a Mac, right? On a Mac, of course, if you're renaming a file, you just single click on the file name and it highlights. And Mac people already know that, but I'm just saying. Now we're going to rename our file, and this is really important that you get this exactly correct to start with, okay? Index, all lowercase, no capital letters, .html. Once you have that typed in, press enter. You will get a warning on Windows. Now notice what the warning message says. It says, if you change the file name extension, the file might become unusable. That's okay, we're IT professionals. Right, all right, so being a little snarky, but you know what, it's the truth of it. And the truth is, sometimes you can change file extensions and make files behave different ways without really changing their contents. It's kind of an interesting thing. So are we sure we want to change it? We're going to click yes. And now you will notice, are you guys catching this? And I'll switch to kind of like icon view. Notice how my icon changed from what looks like a piece of paper to the Google Chrome icon, which is my default browser. So what happened is my operating system looks at that file extension and says, oh, .html, it's a web page. What double click will open it? Chrome. And you know what? I can do that. I'm going to double click and take a look. There it is. Well, it's blank because I didn't put any code in it, right? But it did open Chrome, right? Pretty cool. All right, now let's actually edit the file. So if you installed Notepad++ or Visual Studio Code, here's what you do. Right click, and we're gonna look for open with. Don't click open, because that'll just open the browser. We need to edit the file. So find open with on the right click menu, command click on a Mac, right? And then choose the program to open. Now, I'm noticing that none of the ones that I want are listed in the list. Okay, that kind of creates a problem. So here's what you might want to do. And you don't have to do this right now, but you could do this eventually. You could choose another app and then scroll on the list and maybe, hit more apps. Maybe you'll find the one that you want. Well, there's regular Notepad, don't want that. And then, I'm still not finding what I want. You guys noticing? Mine, okay, well, Visual Studio Code is there, so I could use that. In fact, you know what? I'm just gonna go ahead and do that because that one came up on the list, but normally I would choose Notepad++. So let's just use Visual Studio Code. If you wanted to always open HTML files, you can click the little box. I'm not choosing that right now. On a Mac, I think you have similar options. I don't recall from memory though. All right, so here it is. All right. Now I'm getting an error message. I'm going to go ahead and say open because I created the file. I trust it. Okay. Now we're looking at the contents of the file, which of course is blank. We're going to do something really simple here. We're going to do what you're supposed to do as a first time you code something. You type hello world. It's kind of like this unwritten law in programming. The first program you ever code in anything, and this isn't even a web page technically. We're just putting those words on the screen. So if you want to have fun with it, you can put whatever. Doesn't really matter what it says. I'm going to say hello Racine, whatever. I wish this would end. Hello, whatever. All right. Then I'm going to hit save. So in this program to save, the hotkey is Control S. That's one way to do it. I can also go to the file menu and just choose save. I want you to notice what happens here, at least this is Visual Studio Code, mind you. If I'm in Visual Studio Code and I save, the moment I make a change to the file, you see how the X turned to a dot? Because I changed something, that means it's not saved. Control S, the dot goes away. In Notepad++, if you're using that, same thing happens. Right now my icon is blue. As soon as I start typing, it turns red, means it's not saved. Control S to save. And okay, this one doesn't know where it's going, but I often say that, and just kind of keep this in the back of your head. As I'm saving stuff in videos or whatever, I'll do Control S to save. You might not see me do it, but unlike, let's say like Google Docs, this does not autosave. So you could like write a bunch of code and be working for hours. You forgot to save. Cat comes and like knocks the power out of your computer or whatever. And you can lose all your code. Not good. There's actually a little safety net. I don't usually mention this to people, but Visual Studio Code and Notepad++ will save your document in the product even if you didn't hit save. I particularly like that about Notepad++, so I often use it as just a quick note-taking tool for that reason. All right. So once you have this saved, now we're going to go to FileZilla. All right, so let's find FileZilla on your screen if you still have it running. You should still be connected to the server. I will tell you that after a while, our server will automatically disconnect you, right? Like if it sits for too long. So if you want, you can hit quick connect again just to make sure you're connected. It'll say, it's already connected to a server. Do you want to establish in a new tab or abort? I usually just do abort personally. And so that's just to make sure I'm connected. On the left side of your screen now, this might be a little bit challenging for you depending on how you arrange your files. My files are in my G drive, my Google Drive file stream. Yours might be in your document folder, so you need to find the file you created on the left side of the screen. The easy way to do that is I go all the way up to the top of the top window, as you guys are noticing. So why do people always put stuff on their desktop? Because it's at the top of the list and it's really easy to find, by the way. I know PC users would often knock Mac people for doing that, but hey, you know what? I see, did you see my desktop? I put lots of stuff on the desktop. Right? In this case, I'm actually looking for my G drive. So I'm just collapsing some of these windows here, and I'm going to go to my G drive. I know where my stuff is located because, you know, hey, I set this all up, right? There's my Prometheus, my A account, and I go in there and there's my file. Okay. Now for you guys that are working in Windows and you put all your stuff in your documents folder, let me show you how to get there because it's not really quite so intuitive from here. Because here you're seeing your actual file system, not like the Windows version of your file system, right? And so you have to go to your C drive, scroll down and find the users folder, find your user account. And then as you scroll down, you will find your documents folder. And if you guys remember from last week, right, I created like a gateway folder and my web programming folder and my unit 1 or wherever you put it. And so I just want you to look at, you can look at the address bar here to find it. Similar issues on a Macintosh. Macintosh is kind of arranged it the same way. So they'll have a user folder, maybe a documents folder, et cetera, et cetera. So wherever you put it, you have to know how to find it. But with Windows, isn't that kind of interesting though? Like with Windows, you actually have to go to C, you have to go to the users, find your user account, then find your document folder. Another little note I'm going to make, depending on which version of Windows you're using. If you're using a relatively modern version of Windows, where you're using your OneDrive storage from Microsoft, some of that stuff will actually be on OneDrive and not on your computer. And you might be running into that. And if that's freaking you out at all, let me know and we can always Zoom and figure it out. It's not really that bad, as long as you can get to the file. Right, so documents, gateway, web, unit 1, or whatever you call it. But either way, get to your file. I'm going to go to my file, which is in the correct place, which is on my G drive, my drive, oops, cancel. And there's my Apollo or Prometheus utility account. And here's the file I just created. How do I know it's the file I just created? Well, in the file detail view here, it says 9/19. That's today at about 2:24 and 54 seconds. That's about right. I just created it, right? So here's the fun part. Now we're going to transfer the file. It's as simple as a drag and drop, folks. Take the file in the bottom part of the window and drag and drop it over to the bottom part of the window on the other side and let go. And it's uploaded to the server. That's all it takes. Pretty simple, really. Okay, so now that it's on the server, now the proof is in the pudding, switch over to your web browser, open up a new tab, and type the following, all right? Prometheus.gtc.edu, /, that's the same key as the question mark. And then probably the hardest one to type here is a tilde. So a tilde is a sideways squiggle, which is on the same key as the reverse apostrophe key, which is usually above your tab key on the keyboard. And it looks like a sideways S. It's called a tilde. You guys finding it on the keyboard, I'm hoping, right? And then you type your username. So for me, my username's like A, right? Then I put in my /, and believe it or not, I don't need to type anything else. So if your username's, so if you're John Smith and your username is J Smith, it would be / J Smith /. And if you typed the name of the file correctly, index.html, all lowercase, press enter, and it should load up on the screen. And so right now I'm looking at the file I just uploaded to Prometheus, and hopefully you guys are too. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause the recording for a second and make sure it worked for everybody, and then figure out if it didn't, why or why not, and then help you fix it. Pause. So we're running into an issue here with one of my Mac people that you can see they created an HTML file, but I'm not going to name you, so we're not putting you on the spot, but they used, because they're on a Mac, they didn't know that what the equivalent is to create a file, and so they used Microsoft Word to create the HTML file, which is a mistake, but it's a really good teaching point because it's really a different file format. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to have you right-click on that and just drop it in the trash. So just delete it. Okay. Now that we're inside the Finder window, we're going to create a text file. So normally I'd say find an open spot on the screen. And I'm not sure if you can do that here in Finder. So it's like scroll to the bottom of your file list there, way to the bottom, all right, and see if you can just right click like underneath the number 1, underneath it though. Yeah, there you go. All right, so yeah, so it's not quite letting us do it. So here we have to create a new file, and what are you going to use to create this on a Macintosh? All right, so the default text editor on a Mac is called TextEdit. So do the spotlight search, you can do Command Space. TextEdit is your tool. New document. And notice even this isn't going to work. So what you're going to do right away is close this. This is really odd on a Mac, right? So now go to File up at the top, say New. And all right, so it does the same thing. It's like, oh my God, we're stuck in a loop. Okay. So I'm trying to remember how do you do this? Okay, do a save as. All right. There you go. All right, so notice the file format is rich text document, bad. So what that allows you to do is like bold, italics, colors, etc. Switch that to, well, hey, you got an option there, notice, for HTML. Yeah, so do that. And then save it as index.html. Now it would normally add the .html, doesn't hurt to type it in, right? And then save it wherever you save it. All right. So now we have, and notice the icon, how it changed to a Google Chrome icon. All right. So now do a right click on that and open with and use Visual Studio Code. So it's the second entry from the top. Yeah, just go ahead and click open. You're okay. All right. No. Okay. So now the Mac did you a favor. Yeah, what it did, so you notice what it did? It created a bunch of code for you by default. And you know what? I'm going to have you highlight all that code and delete it. We'll learn how to do all that manually anyhow. And just type hello or whatever. Yeah, and you're putting it inside of quotes, and that's fine. Now do a Control S to save. Command S on a Mac. There you go. And now let's switch back over to FileZilla. All right. On the left side of the screen, and I'm gonna draw on your screen here for just a second. So down here, right click in the open area and choose refresh. I just want to make sure that what we're looking at is the correct version. I'm also seeing some issues. Is this the folder where you're storing stuff?
Yeah. Unit 1 under web programming.
Okay. What I'd like to do is have you go back to Visual Studio Code back here in the background. Bring that application back up. And do me a favor and do a file save as. Because I see we're still running into a problem here. Okay, so it's putting it in, so this is not the right folder, is what it is. Yeah, let's put it there. Assuming it's the right Unit 1 folder. Yeah, right. Just to be on the, see, that's the problem when you name them all the same way. Um, all right, so yeah, this is the spot where we want to save it. So go ahead and click save. All right, now we have an HTML file. Come back here and refresh again. There it is. Drag and drop that one over. All right, now let's be brave and go to the web browser and hopefully it works. Now, are you using Safari or Chrome, or what's your browser of choice here? Okay. And let's type in that URL. So it's going to be prometheus.gtc.edu. And then a / edu, like education. A tilde, it's a sideways squiggle, the shift of the reverse apostrophe key. I don't think you got this far before, maybe. Yep, your username, so first initial, last name typically, and a / Press enter, and voila. All right. So that's success. And Vidal, you have a question. How do you remove something from the right side? You can right click and press delete, or right click and choose delete. Yeah, so the question that Vidal had was, how do you, if you're in FileZilla, how do you delete something? So if it's highlighted, you can press the delete key on your keyboard, or you can right click the file and choose delete. E, you got a question also.
So does it have to show a little girl thing? The little girl icon? Because I know we're both working on that, so my time doesn't show that it's, it doesn't show a little girl icon, but it works.
But does it show like a Safari icon?
No, it shows like a link page.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's a problem at all. You know, it's all about how your system's configured, E. But if you double click it and it opens up in a browser, it's okay. I mean, that's kind of the normal thing. I think what's also kind of fascinating here, folks, is this is really kind of a really primitive action that we just did. We just took a plain text file. It's not really code. We moved it over to the server and we're looking at it. For as primitive as that is, it's really kind of a powerful action. But it's kind of going to lead us to another really important thing now. Once you have this up on the screen like this, so what you're seeing is Roman's successful connection to Prometheus looking at his file, right? So we can see exactly what he typed in the document is coming up on the screen. It's great, right? That's what we want to see. But now you need to turn this in for homework. And the way that you turn it in is you just send me the link, right? So how do you do that? All right, so here's how you do this. And instead of showing you, I'm going to coach Roman through it, and you guys are going to do the same thing, right? So we're going to watch his screen. So Roman, what I want you to do now is click on the address bar up here to highlight the web address. Now you can either right click or Control C or Command C to copy. And then here's how you test it. Either open a different browser or open a new tab. You do this first, always do this first. So we'll just do a new tab, now paste it and press enter. It worked again, right? That seems really silly, right? But here, sometimes people will copy it and not copy it completely or correctly. And then when I get it, it doesn't work. And they're like, but it worked for me. And I'm like, no, it didn't. You just didn't really test it. Right? So you just tested it so you know. If you want to be double extra sure, open up Safari. In fact, could you do that for us? Open up Safari. Because like PC people rarely see Safari unless they have an iPhone, right? And I'll paste it there. And it works there too. So now you have like peace of mind. You know this link really truly works. Now let's go into Blackboard and submit the homework. So watching Roman do his thing here. And this will be in Unit 1, way at the bottom. All right. So let me show you the correct way to submit the link. So some of you will have the temptation to submit the link down there where it says comments. Don't do that, right? And the reason is it doesn't turn into a link. So the way that you do it is hit the right submission button, and I see you're hovering over it. So I hit right submission, and then it brings up a rich text editor. And here's one of the secret things about this text editor, you guys, that most students never discover. You know, like nobody ever clicks ... What does ... do? It gives you the whole toolbar. So go ahead and click that. One tool you'll see on here is this chain link tool, and that's for web links. So here's what you do. Don't even bother to click it. In the window below, do a Command V to paste or Control V to paste. It already turned it into a link. Isn't that cool? Yeah, very nice. What I also suggest that you do is now click the chain link, the first one. And one setting that you typically want to put in here is to open the link in a new window. Now hit cancel because this didn't really load up right. Actually hit cancel on this. Click in the middle of the URL. So maybe click in there somewhere. Now click the chain link. All right, so now you see the URL is there, and then switch it to new window. That's a better setting. So when I click it, when I get it on my end and try to grade this, I'll click the page, it'll load up, and I'll give you your point. Right? So go ahead and click save. And then you don't have to type any fancy words. If you guys want to type a message to me, hey, go for it, whatever. Just hit submit. Excuse me, that's all you need is to hit submit. And then on my end, I will see it. And see, my interface looks a lot like yours. So once again, this is the same thing I see in Blackboard. Click your link and see if it works. Proof again that it works. You know, so you tested it twice before, you tested it once after, you should have peace of mind that it's okay. And every time you guys submit your work, this is what you're gonna do. So whatever pages you create, whatever stuff you create, you upload it through FileZilla, make sure it's all working, copy your link, test it a few times, put it into the right submission, hit submit, test it again, just in case, right? This is the thing in IT. I mean, you never put anything out into the world until you know it's working 100%. And then I check it on my end, see that it's working, and give you your points. All right, Vidal. Okay, we'll take a look at that. Can you share your screen? Okay, so, and this might happen to you too. So what Vidal is getting a forbidden error. And I want to take a look. So Roman, you can hit the stop sharing button if you wish. And the recording is rolling, by the way. I just want to let you guys know that. And now we're looking at Vidal's screen. Okay. All right, so some parts of your screen are kind of blocking out there. I'm not really quite sure why. Is that the Zoom toolbar maybe? Yeah, actually, if you unmaximize the window, the first part I look at when I get an error like this is the URL itself. Yeah, it's still kind of blocked. If you can just like, without even just drag the window down a little bit, so like yeah, there you go. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure you got the right username and all that, and you're fine. You know how to spell your own name, obviously. All right. Next thing that we're going to look at is let's take a look at your FileZilla. So these are really common problems, you guys. Now we're switching over to the Windows platform, and I want to see what's inside of FileZilla. Oh, okay. All right. So Vidal, right here, and I don't know if you're watching my screen or right here, but I'll draw on your screen. There's a little divider right there. Can you click and expand that? Yeah, see, like right in between these, like your cursor changes to that double-headed arrow. Yeah, but expand that first one. Now, the reason I'm having him do that is I noticed right away what the issue is. Does somebody want to call it out before I point it out? He named his hello space world dot index dot html.
So that's why.
Yeah. Do you guys remember just like, I don't know, hour ago, I was like talking about what's the default name for all home pages on the internet? Exactly. Index.html and nothing but. Okay, so Vidal, check this out. Do a right click and rename on the server side of the connection. No, that's the local side. Okay.
Oh,
So you can, that's okay. You can do it there as well. You can do it there as well. It won't harm anything. But I was going to have you do it directly on the server and switch it to, yeah, just get rid of the hello world stuff. All right. Press enter, lock it in. Switch back to your browser for a second. All right. And just refresh. Now, really great example though. So like, as you make the mistake, you're like, oh man, I made a mistake, right? But the flip side is you showed everybody who's watching the video, including the people in the session here, one really common thing that happens and why it's really important for it to be precise. When you look at his URL, you guys, right up here at the top, you notice, you know, going back to kind of that first slideshow we were looking at. So this is our domain name. The first part of it, Prometheus, is actually a subdomain of gtc.edu, right? So kind of like tying it back to the lecture. Afterwards, so what we do on the Prometheus server is this is your account name, tilde account name. And then after the / will be your file and folder structure. We took the index.html file and we put it in the root folder. So we don't have to declare the folder, it's just there. And then the alternate way to access this is to actually type in. So go ahead and do this. Right after that / type index.html, all lowercase. Press enter, same page comes up. So this is really, this kind of proves 2 points here. The first point is that you can access a file directly if you name it and call it correctly. If you don't call the file by name, the default look is it's looking for index.html, and if it finds it, puts it on the screen. If it doesn't, it gives you a message like the one you got. Forbidden, you're looking for something that's not there. Just by the renaming of it, one letter is misspelled. That's enough to break it. Pretty sensitive, right? Yeah, I mean, so, but think about this. When you go out on the web and you go to somebody's website, so that, you know, you're watching how the Packers brutally defeated the Bears. I'm just picking on Bears fans, sorry. But we got, you know, we got our, I don't know, whatever handed to us the previous week. So whatever, you know, it goes around, comes around. But you go into the Packers website to look up the highlights or whatever, and you type packers.com. You don't worry about the HTTP, you don't type www, you don't type packers.com / index.html, right? So the reason they do that is so that you don't have to type that. In the real early days of the web, you did have to type the exact file name. Interesting. These days you don't. A lot of it is software interpolated. It is the default name for a web page, index.html. There are some others that work too, but that's the default for the stuff that we're doing. All right. Thank you for sharing your screen. I appreciate it. I'm going to take the screen back, folks. All right, so here comes my screen, and I'm going to get Zoom out of the way. And I'm just going to pause here for a second and pose a question. So one of our students online was having an issue with what is appearing in the browser. The first thing that's kind of interesting is when you look at a file on your local file system, take a look at the structure of the address bar when it's on your local machine. It tells you that it's on the file system and uses, okay, this is a Windows machine, uses Windows style drive and folder addressing to find the file, right? If you're on a Macintosh, same type of thing will happen. But notice how it's prefaced with file : / etc. So if you were to turn this link in for your homework, you wouldn't get the points because I'm not really looking at it on the server. This only will work on your own machine. See the difference, right? Now switch to the other tab, Jeffrey. Thank you. And this is one that is on the server. I think the big conundrum here for Jeffrey was that, well, one says hello world and one says hello. What that's telling us is it's two different files or two different versions of the same file. Could be either one. Right. So then you go back to local file management. So which one are you moving up to the cloud? Is it, so hello everyone, I would, say that that's probably your most recent edit right there. All right, folks, we're going to take a break just for a few minutes, and the recording is going to